Mr. Allen, are we ready back there? All right. I call the January 7th, 2026 Assembly Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Wendell, will you call roll or no roll?
Thank you, Chair Wall. We have all Assembly members present in chambers besides Mayor Weldon, who is present on Zoom. Thank you.
That brings us to approval of minutes. You have the December 1st, 2025 minutes in front of you. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those are so moved. That brings us to agenda topics, and we will start with the FY 2027 draft AFC budget calendar. Ms. Flick.
Thank you, Chair Wall. In your packet on page 10, you will find a memo from Chair Wall and myself bringing to you some options, and just wanted to get some discussion on how to approach the FY 27 budget, given the number of decisions that are expected to need to be made. And also in response to some feedback that Chair Wall had received. The calendar that you have in there is draft, and more draft. You will see highlighted on January 28th, February 15th, 2 joint meetings that are just there for discussion. Nothing has been scheduled. We've not talked to the other boards. So don't get excited about anything. Just if we wanted to have some additional joint meetings, those are a couple dates that might work with the parties that might work. You'll notice that there's a couple of dates, March 4th and April 29th, that are in kind of a bluish color. Those are just notating that there's 2 kinds of meetings on those particular nights. And then we've also inserted for discussion April 18th as a budget retreat. Currently on the Assembly calendar, I believe it's noted for April 11th. So that's just kind of an orientation to what we have in front of you. Chair Wall, I don't know if you want to add some commentary before discussion or questions.
Yeah, just a few things. So I definitely, I think this budget cycle is going to be different than the ones that I've been participating in, because we'll have different types of decisions as we think about service level cuts. And so I heard from several people that, they expected us to be meeting more frequently, and if we could be doing that sooner than April, that was preferred. But then there's a balance, right? We want to, we've designed a public process, more in-depth public process that we want to, wait for some of that feedback before we make decisions. And the manager and all our staff are doing the work of putting together a proposed budget. And so, we basically are, the big changes that you see here are trying to front load some of the things that we could before April. And so that includes starting to meet with partner agencies. So we'll do that. We'll start that tonight. We do typically meet with our partner agencies throughout the year, but and most of those agencies haven't put together their budgets yet. But we want this to be the first time that we start talking about their budgets. If they are going to be services that we may potentially be considering altering in our budget, now is a good time to start asking those questions of our partner agencies. We'll start that tonight. We've got 2 folks who are going to, 2 organizations who are going to give us an update on what they've been up to. We also have put tentatively here joint meetings with the airport, Docks and Harbors School Board, Bartlett, and Eagle Crest kind of earlier than we normally would. Some of those folks will be done with their budgets, and so that will be a time for us to, review what we typically would. If others aren't quite done, then it would be a time for us to give them the direction that they'll need. So when we finalize things, we're on the same page. In the past, we've done that kind of right at the beginning. So this will be a bit earlier. Other than that, I'd say we've built room in here. We don't exactly know how things are going to go when we get into April and May. And so I would love feedback now or as we go in terms of how you guys want to be having these decisions. So maybe what I'd ask is, if you have questions tonight, definitely ask those. Any feedback tonight, kind of on what you want to see in this process would be helpful. And then we can maybe talk about a few dates before we move on this evening. Thanks. So I'll see if folks have questions first. Mr. Smith.
Thanks. And sorry if you said it. A shift that I see is, just remind me, in the past, we would have likely heard from at least the airport, docks and harbors and Bartlett at the all-day retreat on Saturday. Okay.
This is meant to move that earlier. And it may be that we don't make, they come back with tweaks for us later in the process, but this is basically meant to take what used to be at the all-day retreat and move it into January, February, and March.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no other questions, Mr. Smith.
I was going to say if you're ready for comments.
I'm ready for comments. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's a robust schedule, but I think clearing space on the all-day meeting is wise. I'd have to look and see, which, I guess, it looks like from April to May, we have pretty much booked every Wednesday, which I think is also wise. Part of me was maybe going to just say it's unfortunate, but but I don't know if we should put April 15 down as like TBD so that we block it out now, like if we do need it, and then maybe we can cancel or something. But that would just be one thought, just because we may need all of these. And hopefully we get a Wednesday off in those 2 months, but that may not be in the cards for us this year. So, but strong calendar and schedule. Madam Chair, Ms. Flick, thank you. I think that's might be what we need to do. Thank you.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. Really appreciate seeing, I agree, what we can get out of the way so it's not taking up time on the budget retreat day is a good idea, but also just sort of robust is a good word, but seeing, I was one of the people who has expressed, I feel pretty fervently that we need to start sooner. I feel an anxiousness to start work now, but I recognize the public's part of that process. Staff is part of that process, and we don't want to be working almost to the detriment of letting staff do their work. So trying to figure out what that balance is. I imagine, this looks good to me, I imagine that I'll have more feedback as we go along. It's good to talk to partners, and I've talked with you a little bit about this one-on-one. I think we will discover, hopefully, as we go along, what that space is and what that pacing is for, I don't want to say squirrely ideas, but ideas that may not naturally be an idea that you or staff are going to put on the calendar or the process because they're things we haven't thought about before. One thing that I have brought up before is, if you were to keep a facility in like a keep warm status versus closing it, I think like when we actually get closer to talking about service reductions or things like that, we might have more ideas like that. So making sure we have room to talk about those things. So I think this looks great. Thanks.
We did start a squirrely ideas list already in the background. And so I appreciate that. I think at some point we'll kind of give folks deadlines on like, if there are cuts or, changes that you yourself are going to be championing, that that you come prepared with information on that. And so, I know staff will be working hard on their budget, but it's probably never too early if you've got something that you're going to be exploring to do that with staff, and staff can come to us when they say, you know, we're spending too much time on this thing. The whole body needs to talk about it. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should call out early. I know I've talked with you a little bit about the scheduling of that Saturday retreat. I will just say personally, for me to be attending that whole day on the 18th will be a challenge. I would do my best to be engaged at least maybe on item C. But due to the calendar as it was presented and things, anyway, I do not want to upset the ship. And if that's the best day that works for staff and the most assembly members, I'll clearly go ahead. But I just want to flag that as that I would not be able to participate all day on that day.
I think our number one priority is that everyone can participate all day on our retreat. And so the reason that we thought about shifting it was because Folk Fest is the weekend before, and we know that people participate in that. And, you know, if we could shift it, but my thought would, so we really have 3 potential dates and we should decide tonight. April 4th, I believe, is a possibility. That is Easter weekend. And so we were concerned that that might be family time for folks. April 11th, which is Folk Fest, which I know people enjoy, but that's probably, you know, something that we can give up if we need to. Or April 18th, which I think now is out, because I would say if Mr. Smith's not going to be there, that's number one priority for me. So I will look to the body to see if there are folks who have opposition to April 4th or April 11th. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I would say April 4th in that case works a lot better for me than April 11th. April 11th is always hard. The week of Folk Fest is always a hard one for me to get to.
Ms. Hall.
Yeah, and I would oppose to April 4th because of the fact that it is Easter weekend, and that's would be akin to scheduling something close to Christmas. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? I think given that, I think we've got to stick with April 11th, since that was what was on the calendar, and I know it's Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks. I will obviously go with what was on the previously approved calendar. I will also say that Easter is not as secularly as greatly celebrated holiday as it is Christmas, and so not celebrating the Easter holiday myself, it will be hard for me, but I will see what I can do to make it work on the 11th.
All right, anything else on this? I realized looking at this, one thing that's missing is no room for discussion of potential finance-related ballot initiatives. So we will have to figure out where to put that, because I imagine that'll, I know the 3% is up, will be coming up, and there may be other things. So something to keep in mind. We'll figure out where to put it. Oh, Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a little confused. Is the Saturday going to be on April 11th or April 18th? That was confusing on what we landed on.
April 11th. All right. I think that brings us to partner agents.
Chair Wall?
Go ahead.
Could we get an affirmation from the body that there's a desire to have these joint meetings and do these dates work for this body, and then we can work with those others to try to get that scheduled?
Those meetings being ones that if you have to attend virtually is also acceptable. Folks cool with joint meetings. This means, you know, more Wednesdays. Getting it done. Okay. Looks good.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to partner agency program updates. We've asked the Alaska Committee and Southeast Childhood Collective to come in, give us a 15-minute presentation on what they've been up to. We did give them some guidance to, give us some budget information as they do that, so we can start thinking about it, and there'll be some time for questions. So, Mr. Jensen, I think you are first up.
Assembly. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
And you should press the button on the microphone in front of you, and when it turns green, yes, thank you. And yeah, feel free to go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, my name is Wayne Jensen. I'm the chair of the Alaska Committee. Give you a little bit of background on the Alaska Committee. It was formed over 30 years ago to become more proactive, representing the capital city, and to do what we can to enhance the capital city for all of Alaskans. And we've done that over the last 30 years. Our committee is governed by a board of directors, which consists of 22 members. Two members include Mr. Smith and Mayor Weldon. We also have, they're also included in that 22 is several partners, I would call them, JEDC, Juneau Chamber of Commerce, Southeast Conference, and Travel Juneau are designated members of our organization. Our focus, as I mentioned, includes improving access to the Capitol, enhancing infrastructure to support legislators and visitors, improving communications, and partnering with other organizations to enhance our efforts. The Capitol, some of the partners that we work with all the time are the Capital Fund of the Juneau Community Foundation, the Develop Juneau, which has apartments that are designated for legislators or staff, and the Juneau Downtown Business Association, and probably the most importantly is KTO or Gavel Gavel. Another grant that you have is the grant for Gavel Alaska. That is by far the most important. I think the creation of Gavel to Gavel is which is now Gavel Alaska, was the most important thing that we've ever done. I think in bringing legislature and the communications from the capital city to everyone, virtually everyone in the state. And I think that's been a big success and has started out as a small pilot and has turned into a very, very robust, excellent program that is available to virtually everyone in the city if they choose. Some of the other things that we've worked on, probably the most current one and one of the biggest ones outside of Gavel, Alaska, is the community welcome reception. That's scheduled for 2 weeks on the 20th. It's one that we've been doing for almost as long as we've been in existence. It's an opportunity for all the legislators, staff, members of the administration to join us, the community, in an opportunity that is just a friendly way to welcome everyone back to the capital city for this session. So there's no agenda to it. It's just there's no program to it. It's just an opportunity to meet people from around the state, people that are going to be working with the session for the next 120 days or so. And we really enjoy that. We hope you all attend. It's at the Civic Center in 5 o'clock, I believe, on the 20th. So the first day of the session. Some of the other sponsors, some of the other activities we have scheduled and we do annually is represent the Alaska Committee and the city and the capital in some of the fly-ins that come in. Some of the larger ones like Southeast Conference and AML and Chamber of Commerce and Alaska Power Association, the school boards. We try to have an opportunity to welcome them, and we financially support them as well. And that's something we've done for a long time. We also assist KTO in funding for Gavel, Alaska. That's just more important than it has been in the past with the loss of federal funding. I think they're doing well. I've talked to them, and they said they're recovering and looking at different opportunities and different possibilities for them. And we're joining with that as well, and see if there's more opportunities for sponsorships that we might be able to help with. So that's something on our upcoming, and something we've already worked on, and something that's upcoming too, to increase that, because we definitely want to keep that as a robust opportunity, program that we have, and it's really important to keep it going. We also, another thing we have on our schedule is to continuation of the partnering that we do with the League of Women Voters in their tours through the Capitol during the session. We hope to enlarge that a little bit by making a program that could be distributed throughout the schools in the state, so that it's not just the 8th graders in Juneau that get an opportunity to visit their legislature and the Capitol, that we might be able to digitally have them participate and learn about their Capitol and learn about what the legislature and that we could distribute to the different school districts around the state. So we're working on that, and both the League of Women Voters and Gavel, Alaska are both enthusiastic about helping us with that one, and that's something we've been working on for a while now, and I think this year we're going to be able to accomplish that. As I said, the main purpose of ours is to increase the awareness of the importance of the Capitol in Juneau and what we can do, and make that most available to everybody throughout the state, and mainly increasing awareness of Gavel, Alaska. So I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate your consideration. I'm available to answer any questions. Welcome you to our meetings. We meet at 7 o'clock, the second Wednesday of the month, at the Office of Commerce.
Is that AM?
That's AM, yes. There are 22 people on the board, and about the only time we could find that no one has any previous commitments was 7 AM. And then we decided Wednesday was another one, because that's another one that doesn't have a lot of these. So it's worked, and we get very good attendance. You can ask Mr. Smith; he's usually there, so, as well as the mayor. So, but we look at this opportunity. We're open to any questions you might have. We're requesting the continuation of the grant that we have received in the past, and appreciate working with the city. The city has been a very good partner for us, and working with the legislative reception or other organizations, and we've been able to help the assembly at different times over the years. So I think it's a good partnership, and one that I think is important to continue. So
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Questions from the committee? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you for joining us and giving your presentation. If the city did not continue giving the grant, would you guys cease to be an organization?
I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Other questions? Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here. Then I guess a follow on to Mr. Brooks' question, would the Alaska Committee look to other partners to be a funding source?
We're welcome working with other partners. We pretty much identified people that have a similar purpose as ours. And like I said, we're working with a lot of the people, the Downtown Business Association, the Chamber, Develop Juneau, the Community Foundation. We're already partnering with all of them now. So we're looking for more. If there's people, the League of Women Voters has been an important one for us. And, you know, we have supported some of them financially as well. So particularly the League of Women Voters and Gavel, Alaska.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have a rough idea of how many fundraising sources you have and how much fundraising you do on an annual basis?
The main, our main financing is through the city. The legislative reception is primarily funded through fundraising. The community provides the financial, most of the financial resource, as well as all the gifts that go into the bags that are given to each legislator each year. And those seem like they get better every year, but it's an incredible gift that every legislator is given, as well as the governor, the lieutenant governor. And then we have we collect 63 sets of gifts, and we have one of them on display at the legislative reception, so everyone can see what all the community is given. Our community is very, very good about supporting the legislature and through that, and both through money and through gifts. And you know, the legislative reception costs currently around $30,000, and it's you know, the city is a good partner in doing that and putting it on. So the costs keep going up, but we don't expect to decrease the importance of it.
Ms. Hall.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. With the sponsorship of your fly-ins, what is the average amount that you fund towards supporting the annual fly-in meetings?
Yeah, it varies, but probably anywhere from 500 to 2,500. And it usually is for a specific thing like transportation or, you know, the food or something like that, we've been able to do it. And some of them come back and sponsor us too. So like AML, for instance, we sponsor some stuff for AML and Southeast Conference, and they come back and sponsor the legislative reception. So it works both ways, but we both get credit for you know, what we're doing. So
Ms. Hughes Gandies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jensen, do you know, of course you know, because you're the man with the answers. Do you maintain any kind of fund balance between years, or over the years has the Alaska Committee built up a fund balance?
we do have some reserves, yes. I don't have the amount of that, but we do keep some reserves so that we're able to respond to issues that might come up very quickly without having to come back to the assembly essentially for you know, some work. But we do maintain some resources, and I think that it's a good situation to do that, and I think we've done it at a reasonable amount. We have two very good accountants on our membership, and they've advised us advise us on the amount of reserves that a ordinary organization should have. So
Great, thanks.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may just give a brief comment, just being on the Alaska Committee, I just want to say that the committee and its members and the organizations are like, I mean, there's this excellent list of things they do. There's also a lot of like soft touches with legislators. I think, you know, when the JEDC did a legislative survey, I mean, those were some of the people that went to like talk to legislators and, you know, try to make sure, I mean, problems big and small are being addressed to make Juneau like the most welcoming capital city, to ensure that the capital city stays here. And anyway, the committee does a lot of work in that regard to just be the most welcoming capital city we can be. So appreciate the committee's work, and Mr. Jensen does a lot of it himself. So thank you for the time there.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And Mr. Jensen, I think it's a good reminder that, I know we're really focused on finances right now, and that's because that's where we're at and where we, have to be directing our focus. But we appreciate the update on the activities you're doing as well. I've got one final question. We were asked kind of what would happen if you got no money from CBJ. I think the other question is, what if you were asked to reduce, or you were told the amount that you'd be provided would be reduced, what do you think you would do less of, or how would you, as an organization, kind of figure out how you would, what would be your next steps in that situation?
What I would suggest, if there is an effort to reduce the amount, was that we continue with our annual grant, but we return some of the resources or some reserves that we have. I mean, if that's a possibility, I think that would be keep everything going the way they are, and then maybe we just reduce our reserves a little, and that would be a possibility. We'd consider that. We have considered that, and would be open to that.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. I just wanted to get this last question. Do you have a rough idea of your annual fundraising and what percentage is roughly the grant that's from CBJ?
Well, like I said, the only fundraising we do primarily is for the legislative reception, and we typically are able to get, the last few years we haven't been able to get the 100% of that through local community contributions, mainly because the number of people hasn't changed, but the cost of the reception has increased. But I said that we budget about $30,000 for that, and I think it probably is in the 25,000. We might have a $5,000 or so gap. So in other words, we hope to get about $25,000 to $30,000 in contributions for the year.
All right. So thank you so much for being here, answering our questions. I know if committee members have more, they'll follow up with you. Thanks for being here.
Okay, I'm available, and like I said, I welcome you to come to our meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning. Join Mr. Smith and the mayor.
Miss Scheibler and Miss Love. And it looks like your microphone is already green, so get started whenever you're ready.
Benson for leaving it on for us. Good evening, Chair Wall and members of the committee and staff. Ms. Wendell has a PowerPoint for us. But I'll introduce myself, Blue Scheibler. I'm the executive director of the Southeast Childhood Collective. Still a new name, still a little bit of a mouthful. We used to be AEYC, and we've just recently changed our name.
Hi, thanks for having us this evening. My name is Nikki Love. I'm the creative director at Southeast Childhood Collective, and we are really appreciative of this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to get started, we're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is basically to support all of those who care for young children. So that's families, caregivers, educators, in Juneau and in other Southeast communities. If we go to the next slide, you can see that we've been established since 1982. We are known as a child care resource and referral agency that's part of a national network of organizations that does this type of work in supporting child care providers and families to make communities stronger. You can go to the next slide. The next slide kind of shows the three main buckets of work that we do in Juneau and have done throughout our history. The first one is a focus on family support. We do that through mostly our Parents as Teachers program, which we'll talk about more in depth. And the next bucket is supporting early educators, childcare providers, and then we do a lot of work in terms of community collaboration with other social service, nonprofits, state and tribal entities that also support children and families. And on the next slide.
So this slide highlights the work that Partnerships for Families and Children do. I'm the coordinator of that coalition. It's a coalition consisting of about 20 nonprofit, state, city, and tribal entities who all offer services or supports to families with young children. We meet monthly, and we are now celebrating our 28th year of collaborating. And we are an example known statewide. Most coalitions in other parts of Alaska have only been together a handful of years. It's work that we knew in our small community was really important. I think we all know that Southeast thrives when we work together. So that's what we're doing. One of our goals is to share resources, leverage support, and being really mindful about not duplicating services. So when we're looking at grant funding and service delivery, we collaborate with each other to make sure that we're not competing for resources. We're leveraging and enhancing what is coming into the community and partnering with each other to make sure that that is as effective as it possibly can be. And we also are continually looking at gaps in service and trends that families are experiencing. Like right now, and this has been the case for a while, we see a lot of kin and grandparents caring for young children because there is no childcare available. So we have launched some initiatives to bring resources to those populations. We also partner with the field house and with the libraries. They have attended our meetings and we collaborate together to partner in services. And as an example, there's a family fun night this Friday. The social media blast went out today, and on average, 200 families are attending that. And anecdotal feedback that we get talks a lot about how connecting with other families is such a buoy or a lifeline, especially in this climate and with these weather challenges. To get young children out and have an experience like that and be able to connect with other families is really invaluable.
On the next slide.
Oh, and we do more. We do more than that. We also offer a diaper bank to partner agencies and the families that they serve. And we recently did our update, and we're distributing over 66,000 diapers per year to families. And for those of you who might not be familiar with this, it's a fundamental resource for families. It's often a necessity that can be challenging to afford and to procure. And it's relentless when you have young children. You have to have clean diapers. It's also a barrier to accessing childcare. And it's not something people think about a lot, but many childcare programs require a family to provide their own diapers because the expense is notable. So that is something that we, as a partnership, identified as a need and coalesced resources to offer. We also distribute a monthly parent bulletin. It goes out to about 2,000 subscribers per month, and we have a 70% open rate. And that is, if you're familiar with these things, very much above and beyond what an average open rate is. It's usually in the 30%. So we know that families are engaging with us, engaging with partners who are helping to populate that bulletin with their resources and offerings. We also have a very strong early literacy initiative among partners, and we know that reading with young children, even in infancy, is one of the strongest ways to support children in their development, not only academically, but socially and emotionally. And all of these things, if they're not supported early, we're going to see them in kindergarten. We're going to see kids falling behind and lots of stressors and lots of supports that need to come into play. So if we can catch these things early, we're saving time and money. I think the Heckman equation says it's a 7-to-1 return of investment. For every dollar spent, you save $7.
And I would just add to that, that the early literacy piece is really driven by the school district being one of our strong partners and their recognition that kindergarten readiness rates need a lot of support. And since so many of our partner agencies are working with families and children every year, that's a main goal of this community collaboration is what can we do? And we've tried different strategies throughout the year, and from year to year, it changes. Last year, we really focused on improving just kindergarten registration rates. The district had reported that about 50% of kindergartners register early and the other half show up the day school starts. And it's a huge burden for them in terms of like placing children in classroom management and stuff. And so we put out a big effort for that and had some success. And the next slide continues the highlight of our parent support with our Parents as Teachers program. This is a home visiting program where a family gets early childhood specialists come to their house, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, depending on where they rank in terms of their needs. And they bring a fun activity, and then they bring developmental information about their child's development at that point in time and how they can support it, sort of with the idea that the parents are the child's first teacher. But so many of us, when we have kids, we don't really know what we're doing. And so having this expert come into your home. And another really important part of this program is they're really checking with the parent. They're not there to really like play or engage with the kid. They're there to support the parent and say, how has parenting been for you? What kind of supports do you need? How can I help you? And then they do a lot of work to connect parents to resources that they need for their family or for themselves. We see this having a huge impact on postpartum depression and anxiety among families that we work with. The Parents as Teachers program also hosts a weekly play group at our office. And so that's usually attended by grandparents or parents who are staying at home with kids. That's one of the highlights of our week, is having a bunch of toddlers running around our office. And then they do monthly group events called Group Connections, where everybody, including families who are on the waiting list. Our program right now serves around 100 families with full services, and we have about 70 on the wait list. But if you're on the wait list, you can have access to the diaper bank and come to the Group Connections, and we really try to keep them engaged while they wait to be enrolled in the program. And then I would just point out that Parents as Teachers is nationally recognized as an abuse and neglect prevention tool if it's used to fidelity. And the Juneau Parents as Teachers program is the largest affiliate in the state. There's only 4. And we hold a blue ribbon status. Emily, our program manager, would want me to tell you all that, which means that we use the program to fidelity. So it actually does have those outcomes. And on the next slide, we move into the next big bucket of our work, which is supporting early educators. And we do that in a variety of sectors, including in Head Start, school district, licensed childcare, unlicensed childcare, and what used to be known as Rally or after school care. And we can get into some more details on that in the next slide. And before I talk about this, I did want to just note that the CBJ has been for a long time just very supportive of childcare, the sector in general, recognizing that it's a necessary part of our economy and a huge support to families. And so going back to like 2012, the Assembly, the city has invested in programs to help support childcare providers. And it's, as a former childcare provider, that's widely known among providers here and greatly appreciated. I'll never forget when COVID hit and I owned a childcare center, and the Parks and Rec department was delivering PPE to our facility because we couldn't get it anywhere else. childcare providers were called essential and told to stay open, but given no support. And the city and the EOC stepped up and they were delivering Ziploc bags of hand sanitizer that might have exploded all over the sidewalk, but it was a really a great support. And so after COVID and some CARES grant funding was used to stabilize childcare providers, the city leadership at the time recognized that even though those pandemic era funds were going away, we needed to keep supporting them or they were probably going to close like they were all over the state. And so that we transitioned into a city funded and assembly grant funded program. At this point, I had moved away from being a childcare provider and it was in this role. And we designed a monthly childcare grant program similar to the one that the state has. And so this issues a monthly operating grant to licensed childcare programs that don't already have subsidies, like Head Start and school district. Tribal programs that are already subsidized don't participate in this. Just with the recognition that the childcare market is kind of broken and businesses can't stand on their own, especially post pandemic. We are still sort of in those circumstances. And so as a result of that, each program gets a monthly operating grant. We saw childcare provider wages go from $13 an hour to $20 an hour almost immediately. And those have been sustained since this grant program started. And what it's really done is it has stabilized the childcare sector in Juneau, where across the state where we've lost, I think, 30 to 40% of programs, and they're just closing almost every month everywhere, but not here. We did lose a couple of programs to just people retiring. These are like women who did childcare in their homes for 30 plus years. And there was 3 of them, and all 3 of them told me they would not have retired if they didn't know that other people were going to open programs in their place. So this investment from the city of Juneau has had a huge impact on the childcare sector. Those funds also provide they fund the Hearts Awards, and that was actually started in 2012. That's an award that goes directly to an individual, and it's an award based on their own professional development. So as they move up in their education and professional development, they get a higher tier status award twice a year. And then we have a startup and expansion grant program that's also funded through this, and then a variety of other professional development opportunities, which are highlighted a little bit more on the next slide. Circles of Security in the Classroom is a training program that it's unique in the state. We have the only facilitator of it, and it gives you a childcare provider like a one-on-one coach to go in and just help them do their job better, and just with more information. And then we host an early childhood conference every year at Centennial Hall that brings in around 250 educators from usually 16, 17 different communities, mostly in Southeast, but also some from Anchorage. On the next slide, I think one of the most impactful things we do for the childcare workforce is our childcare apprenticeship program. We're in our 3rd year of it. This is a federally registered childcare apprenticeship. And last year we had 4 apprentices that graduated, and they are all still working in childcare. And now there are journey workers, and so they're working with the next cohort. We have 4. We actually expanded to include some teachers in other Southeast communities. We have an apprentice in Yakutat and Sitka now. This is not a city-funded program right now. This is a program that we started with a grant that was given from the state to the city and passed to us, and as like just a startup. And this is a program that we are struggling to keep viable with the lack of funding, but also very hopeful about some relationships that we've made with the U.S. Department of Labor. that are very interested in our model and funding it. And then CDA trainings, I'll just mention really quick, as a child development associate is a credential that providers can get relatively quickly, within 3 to 6 months if they work really hard at it. And it's one of those credentials that licensing requires. So we really focus a lot on trying to get as many providers in town as possible to have that credential so that programs can benefit from meeting that licensing regulation.
And I'll ask you to wrap up here pretty quickly. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. One of our big projects that I'm working on is building a comprehensive family and childcare center. Phase 1 will house a large childcare center to serve up to 100 children. It will also house the apprenticeship program, so we can train the workforce that will be working with the families and kids. And we know that many of the centers have operated for years without enough workers. And we cannot expand childcare availability without training a workforce. And the apprenticeship program is designed to do that, give skills to the folks who are going to do this work. It's also going to be a place for families to connect. And we know that the Surgeon General, I think it was 2024, came out and said that parental stress is a national health crisis. And we know that Alaska has high rates of abuse and neglect. So all of the work that we're doing is to address these things so we can have a really healthy and productive community. We have secured our land. We have a 3.5 acre plot in the Hansinger subdivision off of Egan Drive. And we have completed a positive feasibility study. All phases of our project are viable. And we also have a formal cost estimate, and we're working with our campaign, capital campaign manager to finalize our pro forma and to launch our capital campaign and secure funding so we can hopefully open our doors sooner than later. And not only are we looking to address issues and get those supports to families, but we're really looking at the impact that will be in our community from the STORIS being ported here. And our tagline is very intentional. We are supporting families and we are building childcare. That is our mission, and that is what we're actively working on. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for being here. And again, caveat that if our questions are finance related, it's just where our brains are right now and not a reflection on all the probably other questions we have about the amazing work you do. Questions from the committee? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you're talking about the journey workers and the apprenticeship program, once they get in, once they get into journey status, is that the same as being a licensed care provider?
In Alaska, providers themselves are not licensed. The license is attached to a facility. They do get an apprenticeship certificate from the National Apprenticeship Office.
Ms. Hall.
Yes, I read that you were expecting possibly some trickle-down funding from the Rural Health Transformation funding. Could you speak a little bit more about what you plan to do with that funding?
Yeah, the notice of funding opportunities for that should be coming out this month. We were personally approached by Leah Van Kirk about applying for it. She intentionally, when she wrote Alaska's plan for that, she intentionally included childcare workforce in it. And so because we have the only registered apprenticeship program in the state, she told us to be on the lookout for a funding opportunity for that. Also noteworthy that in the Rural Health Transformation Grant is expected to be large investments in home visiting programs. And so our Parents as Teachers program will be losing some federal funds from OCS. And we hope that those will be replaced with the Rural Health Transformation.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. thanks you two for all you do. I wanted to, I was just looking at some headlines, but I'd heard about, freezes to federal grants regarding childcare. Does that affect Alaska or anything you can talk about? Alaska, or I guess more so, or Juneau or Southeast childcare centers?
Alaska hasn't been targeted for that yet. My bigger concern with what the federal administration is trying to do is undo some changes that will impact how low-income families access childcare assistance.
Just to follow, and that would impact Alaska, Juneau, Southeast, or could potentially impact Alaska, Southeast, and Juneau families.
Yes, specifically families who qualify for childcare assistance.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Brooks, then Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have a number of how many children are under direct care from the Southeast Childhood Collective, or is it kind of like subcontracted out to other people that have care provider facilities, or do you currently have a facility that care is being provided out of?
We do not provide direct childcare services currently. We're hoping to build a childcare center, and when that's built, our intention will be to hire a contractor to run it.
Could you share with us what that rough cost estimate of the facility would be?
Right now, 16 million.
That's not just the childcare center, though. That also includes an indoor park and agency offices. We envision a handful of different nonprofits being there that would offer support to a large childcare center. We've never really had one that big in Juneau. And as we've talked about staffing being a challenge in childcare, we want to really set it up for success. And so we're looking at partnering with other agencies that would be there that can help with some of that sort of administrative and quality programming support.
Ms. Hall.
Yeah, hopefully, final question maybe, but is everyone that wants childcare able to access it in Juneau and Southeast, or there's still a large waiting list? And
There's a large waiting list, especially for children between the ages of 0 and 18 months. Right now, in licensed settings, there is only enough care for 1 out of every 3 children.
And I'd like to add to that childcare programs, and I'm talking more like the centers, not the family homes. Almost all of them are operating with fewer children than they are legally allowed to have because they can't find teachers to be able to take in more. So we technically have licensed space available. We just don't have the workers there. And so that's why we have such a big focus on the workforce. Childcare is a very challenging job. You don't just jump into it with no skill or training or education and find success. And so if you enter this job and you don't know what you're doing and you get bit in the face on your first day of work, you might not be coming back if you don't know how to address, things like that. And so that's what we really found with the first group of apprentices that graduated. They feel very successful in their jobs. They feel successful as coaches for the new apprentices because they got the training and education that they needed to be successful.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I guess Ms. Hall's question kind of brought to mind a question for me. My question is basically what metrics would you say that you use in order to measure that your programs and your organization have been successful and have made an impact?
In terms of the supporting childcare programs?
Yeah, I think I'd say especially that's one of the major crises we faced in Southeast.
Yeah, I would say the biggest metric is that they're not closing, they're staying open, and we are growing programs. We've had, since the startup grant program was funded, we've had 4 new family childcare programs open. and one transition into a center. And to give you a concrete example, there's a large union hall here who's considering turning their union hall into a childcare center and moving their offices upstairs. And when he did the budget, the numbers, he was like, why, how does anybody do this? This is crazy. And then I said, well, add in what you would get from this CBJ grant, and it completely changed it. And he pitched it to his leadership and got it approved, and we're working on getting that open. So I would say that's our metric. People are staying open and new programs are opening.
I'd like to add, this is kind of a soft metric, but over the time that we have had support from CBJ, a number of communities statewide, including Sitka and Skagway and Homer and Nome and Valdez, have all reached out to us in some way. Some of them are just to have a brief presentation to them. They want to find out how we're doing this, how we're keeping programs open, what relationships we had to build, what kind of support is being offered. And some of them are launching their own initiatives and looking really closely at how they can utilize their revenue streams, because they recognize that without a childcare base, people can't go to work and their communities just aren't as strong.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you guys see any possibility of the vision of your facility being reached by going through with a partnership with organizations that are already in the Floyd-Dryden space and expanding in that area more, and kind of using that as a means to not have as much overhead and get things, going quicker?
Are you referring to the family center?
Yes, just the Floyd-Dryden land and specific, just, leasing out a portion of that so you're not responsible for all the overhead of a facility, and then having like partners in the same area and be able to work symbiotically.
Yeah, my understanding is that Clinton and Haida has plans to use that whole space. To my knowledge, right now, they have a lease on it. And our building is designed in a way that we envision needing a purpose-built space. We did look at working with one of the schools when we found out one of them was going to be open, but it made more sense for Clinton and Haida to be in there because they already had childcare programs or Head Start programs that were kind of spread out all over town. And so coming together into that building, it's a really lovely project that we wholeheartedly support. But we don't see our project being able to fit in there.
Quick one.
For the manager, do you know how much of the Floyd-Dryden facility is being leased out by Clinton and Haida?
Thank you, Assemblymember Brooks. Clinton Haida is leasing out all of the classroom space at Floyd-Dryden. The gym space is still available and managed through Parks and Recreation. And we do have a signed lease with them, and they're actively renovating that space.
All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure folks will follow up if they have more questions.
Thank you.
All right. I am going to suggest we take a break here. Let's take a 10-minute break. Our next item, we did get a supplemental materials pretty late. So if you have not read the memo, I have not. Please use some of your break to review it.
Is there?
Mine's working.
Does that, oh, no, it works. Cool. Okay, that brings us to the National Resource, I believe it's Natural Resources Conservation Service Bio. Is this Manager Kester?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I can't see you guys. All I see is that lovely clock. Not that I don't know what you look like, but I'll just let the clerks know that on Zoom we don't. There we go. Okay. So thank you. So my apologies that this was a red folder item. We kind of had tag teamed it, and then Snowmageddon happened, and so needed to pull this together after a packet deadline. I want to just briefly touch on why a buyout program for the 18 properties on View Drive is even being considered when we have a preferred alternative for an enduring solution. We will be briefing you on the Lake Tap, which is the preferred alternative that came out of a 3-day charrette with Army Corps of Engineers in December 25. But that timeline for that project is 6 years, and that is if everything lines up. And I can tell you, Mayor Weldon and I are both here in Washington, D.C. with Tlingit and Haida, President Peterson and his staff advocating for that accelerated timeline, advocating for that funding. It's $1 billion project. And we have, tremendous support from the delegation. Senator Sullivan was our last meeting this evening, and boy, he is definitely doing everything to apply that pressure. However, there are no less than 30 points of failure the core team has analyzed when looking at that aggressive timeline and things that have to line up, including, acts of Congress, literal acts of Congress. So 6 years is still too long for many people, and it's definitely too long for our neighbors on View Drive that are experiencing, catastrophic flooding every year, because the HESCO barrier solution, phase 1 and phase 2, just cannot be designed to address them. And I know that you know this, but I do want to acknowledge that there will likely be that's an individual decision for those property owners whether or not to take their chances and wait for an enduring solution. And we are doing everything in our power, and so is your federal delegation, to speed that process along. So all of that kind of as a preface for the memo before you today. The last time you talked about this was October 30th, and you had a presentation from Brett Nelson with NRCS, and he is online today and available to answer questions that you have. I just want to briefly summarize the project. The project would be a buyout of up to 18 homes on View Drive, and those homes would need to be demoed and turned into parkland in perpetuity to participate in this program. The program is entirely voluntary, so no one has to participate, but there is some likely combination of homes that work or don't work. And I think the example that Mr. Nelson used was if the least impacted homes were the only homes that wanted to participate, that would unlikely make a good argument for a project. There is federal funding set aside for this project, but we do need to move relatively quickly because it is an emergency, and of course it's an emergency authority. The rough order of magnitude cost estimate for both the buyouts and the demolition and restoration is $25 million with a 25% non-federal cost share. We did receive direction at the October meeting to request a waiver from NRCS for that cost share amount. We promptly requested that, and we were notified that that waiver was denied. We notified View Drive residents of the denial of that waiver as well. So now the question before you today is whether or not to continue to pursue the program, knowing that there's if every property participated, there's a $6 million cost share that has to be non-federal. I do want to, point out that, you can decide to participate and pull out right before there's a project agreement that we need to sign to be able to take the next step to participate. That is by no means binding. However, there's a tremendous amount of staff effort involved in this program. We have to carry out not only the paperwork burden, but also the project itself. Any risk associated with cost overruns are borne by CBJ. And there's frankly, a goodwill measure too, right? Of both NRCS and the program and participating. So while I don't think a final decision needs to be made today, in fact, I suspect you would want to gather more information from residents. I do hesitate going too far down the path of a project without having a good idea that it's something that the borough wants to undertake. So the memo kind of walks you through some different options. Certainly, we have the city of Borough of Juneau has contributed to protecting homes through the HESCO barrier project, and that was, of course, a combination of contribution from local properties and taxpayer dollars. And that amount for every property in phase 1 of the LID was $10,000. As I always remind you, there are plenty of expenses left for our flood long-term, both our short-term flood fighting and our long-term flood mitigation. Even though we have the Army Corps of Engineers coming in doing phase 2, there's maintenance, there's our participation in that project, which includes constituent outreach and assisting, being the boots on the ground. And there likely is a never-ending stream of cost. One scenario would be a 90-10 cost share for the Enduring Solution. So at $1 billion, that's a $100 million project. We're, of course, advocating, all the time to reduce those impacts to our community. But the point is there is no shortage of public funds that will be needed to save our community from this existential threat. So the memo just walks you through a couple of decision points. And if you do decide to participate, I think one option would be to send a certified mailing to View Drive residents outlining kind of the terms and conditions under which the city and Borough of Juneau would participate in the program. We have heard from 3 property owners that they're interested in participating, but we haven't proposed to them any amount of cost share. We cannot, from what I understand, we cannot just reduce the amount that the property owner gets when their home is built out by that 25% cost share. That is not an eligible way to carry out that program. Certainly there are ways that a nonprofit or even the property owner themselves could contribute to that project in order to offset some of the taxpayer dollars. So those are the kind of pieces that this memo is prompting you to discuss so that we can either not participate in the project and make that decision tonight, or give the property owners some real informed information about what kind of their responsibilities would be and a better vision of what participating in the project looks like.
Thank you, Manager Kester. Questions from the committee? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you, Manager Kester. It would help me a bit if you could or you or Mr. Nelson could give me some examples with numbers, say there is a property on View Drive that, could possibly participate in the program and the assessed value is $500,000. Can you help me figure out how that, anyway, what that looks like, or what are some of the financial things related to that property owner should they wish to participate and should the project go forward?
Yeah, so the amount that property owner would receive in a buyout program would be the 2024 flood amount appraised value. So NRCS would do an appraisal of those properties to find that value. The value that I think is more difficult to quantify, and Mr. Nelson may have better insight here, is the remainder of those project costs that are demolition and permitting and restoring that property to parkland state. And so that is a more difficult number to pin on a property, right? Per parcel, how much would that be?
You have a follow-up, Mr. Smith? Go ahead.
I do. I'm just so would they get, sorry, did you say they would get 75% of the 2024 assessment? But I'm confused on say the other costs are, $5 million total. Anyway, I'm just like, are they just gonna get 75% of the assessment? Or are they gonna get less than that or more than that?
So under the program, they get the appraised, not assessed, appraised value is higher than
Yes.
assessed value, pre-flood damage. They get 100% of that. One thing we cannot do is say, hey, the city has to pay 25% cost share, so we're going to reduce that check that you get from the federal government by 25%, or let's even say 50%, because we know that we're going to have a lot of project costs. We cannot do that. So we have to be able to commit upfront to our 25% cost share of that project. That total project cost is $25 million. So that's over $1 million per parcel. Does that help? Am I not?
I'm seeing that other people are understanding, but I am not. But I don't know how you can better say it. So anyway, maybe we can continue on, and maybe I'll learn throughout here.
Okay, I have Ms. Hughes Candies, Mr. Brooks, and Mayor Weldon. Go ahead, Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask a question. I will note that I wasn't there at the October 30th. So if meeting, and unfortunately I did not before I'm not confident after hearing Mr. Smith's question that I have the understanding I thought I had. So Ms. Custer, I am going to ask if my understanding is correct. This 25 million project cost, that estimated cost is the cost of purchasing, if all of the homes were to participate, to purchase those homes, as well as it's that, whatever that number is, X plus the Y, where Y is me turning it into a park, demolition and restoring. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Follow up? And so looking in this memo and seeing that it can be, so long as it's non-federal, it can come from other sources. Is there a world where if we are all homeowners and we all want to participate, I guess this mathematically probably wouldn't add up, but in a theoretical world, if we're willing to pony up the non-federal bit, because I want to be bought out, and I'm willing to, we're each going to pay a portion of the city's share, so the city doesn't have to pay anything. Would that be allowable? I'm not sure that would make sense to the owner, but.
Yeah. So thank you for that question, because that is indeed a scenario where that I have talked through with the attorney. For example, let's say the per parcel total project cost is $1.38 million. And so maybe a property owner who does want to participate gives the city and borough of Juneau a check for $350,000 to hold in escrow. If that project moves forward and is finalized, that would be 25% of that share. And that's a huge number. And of course that would vary depending on the value of the parcel. But that is one example. And the city could decide to offset that request by whatever amount. But that is one scenario that I did talk with the city attorney about. I appreciate that there is a number of reasons why property owners may not have appetite for something like that, but that would be a mechanism for us to ensure that we have those non-federal dollars.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Brooks. Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have knowledge of when these houses were built? I know that the unknown cost is how to demolish them, and I'm wondering if we have to deal with asbestos.
Thank you for that question, Mayor Weldon. I do, that information is available on the website. I don't know if the cost estimate includes dealing with asbestos. We found when we did debris removal for the flood, it really did hover around the 1980 mark. So my guess would be that the hazardous mitigation for these projects would be less than some of our downtown properties, for example.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Out of the 3 homes that are interested in partaking in the program, what's their impact level? Are they, severely impacted, or some of the more lightly impacted houses?
Yeah, I don't have that information. I mean, I think for each property owner, the impact is very real. I also want to make sure I clarify that 3 property owners have reached out to us about participating. None of them have been asked to, how they think about a personal financial contribution. So I do think that would be a very different answer, or at least a very different consideration.
Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would this program let me word this a little better. Could houses use this program if they had been flooded previously to 2023?
So I guess the program as designed and that as we have requested is for View Drive residents only, regardless of if they started flooding in 2014 or 2023. Maybe your question is what the appraised value would be. Okay.
Ms. Hughes Candies. We'll come back to you. I saw Mr. Smith and Mr. Steininger. Oh, but I already got a question from Mr. Smith, so I'll go to Steininger.
Thank you. And Manager Kester, you may have already answered this, and I apologize if I didn't catch it. Of the $25 million estimated cost, what proportion of that estimate, or how many millions of that estimate, is the actual buyout value of the 18 homes? And how much is the kind of other costs?
I don't have that figure. We do have Brett Nelson online, who came up with that cost estimate, or his organization did, and he may be able to give further detail on how he came up with the cost estimate.
Hear me?
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr. Nelson. Did you hear the question? We can't hear you now, unfortunately. We did hear you right at the start.
Am I back?
You are back. Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. I can tell you off the top of my head, roughly on average, we used Zillow estimates as an approximation for appraised value. And I think on average, over all 18 properties, it probably lands at around $750,000 as an average. So the costs in excess of that would be the demolition and the site restoration, things like that. I can, as we're talking here now, I'm going to try and look something up and get a little more accurate information for you on that.
Thank you. We'll come back to you in a bit on that one. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I just wanted to ask about how and when and if these numbers could change. So say we say, yes, we want to participate in the program and do a certified mailing, and then we say, we would ask, the participating owners to contribute the pro rata 25% share. We could change that later. I imagine we also will get better cost estimates later. I mean, we will, anyway, just trying to figure out down the line, these numbers will, and well, in some cases will, and in other cases may or may not, could change.
That's a question for Mr. Nelson. Is that correct? Or,
I don't know if Manager Kester knows, or anyway. Trying to think about the finality of, the things we're doing tonight.
I'm gonna, just because we're having technical difficulties with Mr. Nelson, he did say that they would, NRCS would come in and do an appraisal, and the value would be the 2024 appraisal value. So I suspect that would be different than the Zillow numbers that they use just to get a rough order of magnitude cost estimate. I don't know when that timing is. And I did confirm that the estimate for those buying out those homes is $13.5 million. So, about half, a little more than half the total project cost is buyouts, and the rest is restoration. So that's a hefty price tag for restoration.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Manager Kester, is about, you mentioned a nonprofit as well as, it could come from any number of sources. Was someone like Southeast Land Trust, I feel like they got brought up before, but has any community partner expressed interest, or that's just an example of other places that are non-federal?
So we have reached out to other nonprofit partners, and they're certainly amenable to the conversation. I think it's just a lot harder to come up with that type of match, especially in a short time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
my answer is no, but we have had some of those conversations, and organizations are certainly sympathetic and interested, but not interested in so much as they're able to commit millions of dollars at this time.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You were saying that the NRCS would do the appraisals. What if someone isn't satisfied with their appraisal or wants their own appraisal, or like how would that mess with the process?
That would be a question for Mr. Nelson.
Mr. Nelson, we can see you now. Go ahead.
Yes. So, to be clear, the appraisal, if the project proceeds, an appraiser would be hired. That'd be part of the project costs. City Borough Juneau, as project sponsor, would hire an appraiser to appraise each of the interested properties. And the homeowners do have the ability to, because this is voluntary, they have the ability to turn it down. They can say, well, that's the number, I don't agree to it. And they can walk away at that point. There is the ability for them to, one other thing I just wanted to be clear about that was talked about earlier. When we said that we can't just offer the homeowner like 75% of the appraised value, that really isn't a question for the attorneys, but they have weighed in on that. But the biggest problem with that is if you only offer them 75% of the value and they accept that voluntarily, then the actual cost of the program becomes that lower number, and then NRCS only pays 75% of that number. So that's the part of the dilemma, is you end up kind of chasing your tail there. That's why the more likely route would be some sort of third party coming up with the 25% local cost share.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson or Ms. Kester, either way, but maybe Mr. Nelson. Who in the past, who have been some of those third parties that come up with the cost share? Is it usually a municipality, or like who has come in with that money in the past?
Yeah, so great question. This is the first time the buyout option of the EWP program has been used or will be used in Alaska if we do this project. So I don't have any Alaskan examples. Buyouts only became an option in the program within about the last 1.5 to 2 years in the program. Some of the other states that have taken advantage of this, typically it is the county or the city that's sponsoring the project that does come up with the local cost share. And it's across the country. There hasn't been a lot of these done, probably a few dozen, and it's really everything from soup to nuts. Sometimes they come up with it out of their own budget. Sometimes there's an entity like Southeast Alaska Land Trust that steps in. It's kind of all over the board.
Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just so I'm clear, the 25% is not the 25% of the assessed value, but it's 25% of the total project costs, which could far exceed the 25% of the assessed value. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
So I'm asking the homeowners if they want to chip in. I think we might have our answers, but worth the ask, I guess.
Did I see a hand? Mr. Kelly.
There's a few things that could affect my decision that I've kind of taken for granted that I want to make sure, but I think I want to confirm them before I make any sort of decision tonight. So, the rest of the valley has, or at least a good portion of the valley has the HESCO barriers to protect them as a temporary measure. The HESCO barriers won't protect View Drive. If we don't do this, are there any other temporary measures that would protect View Drive? This could be for anyone. I think it's more direct to the manager Kester, though.
Yeah, thank you. Not that we are aware of, and we have definitely been asking those questions.
Mr. Smith.
If there's not other questions, could I have like a 3-minute at ease to like try to figure this math out?
That would be awesome. Any more questions? All right, let's take a few minute at ease. Mr. Smith will solve this one for us. All right, I'm bringing us back. Mr. Smith?
Okay, I think I have a better understanding of, if it's just like, if every property owner participates, if there's the same value, my brain starts to melt a little bit when it's changing values and if people aren't participating and this and that, but I think I at least get it enough to go forward with something. I would move that the city of Burgeo participate in the program, that we would formally communicate with the View Drive residents to gauge interest in the program, and that the interest would be, about participating in the program if they are interested in contributing the pro rata 25% cost share for their property. And my understanding is the pro rata would mean if someone has a $1 million home, they would be contributing more. I don't know if it's twice as much as someone who has a $500,000 home, but that's my understanding of okay. And so I'm getting confirmation that that's what the pro rata means. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll just ask for, well, if you have questions, you can, any objections, including for questions. Ms. Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to follow up, to make sure I'm understanding the motion. So to decide that we would participate in this home, I guess I'm looking for some assurance that this is the starting step of that you're giving us a starting place to include in certified mail to View Drive because, okay. So the direction to staff would be that they're coming up with that. Okay, thanks. I remove.
Staff, do you feel like you have, if this was to pass, you have the direction that you would need just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I would probably bring the information back to you at a later meeting. I would request a relatively tight turnaround given the emergency nature of this program, and probably ask you again once you have better information about your desire to fully participate in the program.
I see head nodding here. All right, any objections to the motion? Seeing none, that's so moved. Are folks cool moving to the next weighty topic? I'm seeing head nods. Okay, that brings us to the municipal building project. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Nelson, for being here and for all your help in navigating this difficult issue.
Thank you for the
Difficult and emotional. All right, municipal building project funding. Is this you, Ms. Kester?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So just to briefly, I don't know that you need much of a recap because this body has a very real and recent lived experience through our path of trying to find office space for downtown employees. But maybe I'll just recap where we last left it in September of 2025. You agreed to purchase the Burns building. You passed an ordinance to purchase the Burns building. And then we brought you some cost estimates for 3 different scenarios of remodels. And those cost estimates had some sticker shock from the last cost estimate we brought you. And we said, don't worry, we're going to do some more design work and we're hopefully going to bring these numbers down. Instead, we did more design work and those numbers just continued to escalate. So for example, the full reverse floor plan, that would be kind of reconfiguring the entire space so that management offices are in the center and cubicles are on the exterior walls, much like how the Permanent Fund Corporation has there is laid out. We had estimated at $7.5 million when we had, limited information, and that cost estimate now is upwards of $20 million. Non-starter, right? A partial remodel is what we are advocating for the Burns building. And that, my memo doesn't say this, but that remodel estimate, it came in at $13 million. We're committed to value engineering that number down to $8.5 million. And the types of things that cost estimate includes is some interior walls, to create office spaces. It includes partitions and cubicles and cubicle furniture. It includes paint and carpet. It includes an expansion of the Board of Education room to make it the same size of your chambers now, and a new dais, because guess what? The one you're at is particle board, and if we even look at it wrong, it's going to disintegrate. So that's what that cost estimate includes. It doesn't include new furniture for employees that will have their own office space. It doesn't include renovating the bathrooms. It does also include a public counter space, because that's a very important piece of the reason for this move, is so that we can be more efficient for our public, more efficient for our employees, but also for our public. So they have one place to go to receive city services. And again, as you know, the current kind of status quo option, which we compare everything to, really no longer is an option because of the change of ownership in the Marine View building, but most importantly, because of the conditions there with a lot of leaks and just ongoing issues. The building needs to, have us move out so those units can be renovated into apartments. It would be the previous owner intention was to renovate those back into apartments. And certainly there's value in that for the city and borough of Juneau. Our operating costs will decrease by about 50% with the moving. So moving out of City Hall, moving out of our lease properties will decrease our operating costs. And that is a value for us as we move forward. I want to talk a little bit about timing. You again passed an ordinance to purchase the Burns building. I have not signed that purchase and sale agreement yet. It's finished. It's ready to be signed. I want to have a plan for funding these basic renovations before signing that. We also need to move quickly on being able to have that funding secured so that we can award those bids, hopefully sometime this spring. So that is why I'm bringing kind of a plan to you at this time instead of waiting until later. So the plan, if you recall, there's $14.5 million in two separate CIP accounts for City Hall and New City Hall, and we would propose combining those into one account and titling the project Municipal Building. In our minds, this is not a new City Hall, this is not a City Hall, this is a basic municipal building that will provide municipal office space and municipal services. And of course, we will be sharing the building with a permanent fund corporation. So the ask for you today is $6 million to be able to complete that renovation. And I, understanding the pressure that is on your fund balance, you have $15 million in fund balance, but you are entering a period of a lot of uncertainty. We have said we're going to spend some fund balance in 2026 because we're not jumping to knee-jerk reactions with budget cuts. We want to see information on what our revenue impacts are, how much we can control through managing our labs better before you make those decisions. And that uncertainty for 26 and probably for 27 too, as we do as we implement some cuts, but again have imperfect information. We've talked about this being a 2-year cycle of reductions to our budget as we get more information. All of that uncertainty means you need to preserve your fund balance. So the proposal that I have here is a series of transfers. So the proposal is to take money from capital projects that are either not likely to be funded or be finished in the near future compared to the need that we have with renovating the Burns building. And so there's a list in your packet, $2 million from Capital Civic Center. This is the amount that would be left after the $5 million transfer that was made from that account to long-term flood mitigation and maintenance. That was something that you guys did a few meetings ago. $1 million from the North State Office Building parking garage. That project is very needed to be a good capital city, like we talked about earlier with the Alaska Committee. We got a $5 million grant from the legislature for that project. We also have $5 million slated in the 1%, $1 million of which has been appropriated. We've done some engineering on that project and discovered that it was not built as it was designed, so it cannot hold additional stories of parking without essentially reinforcing the whole garage, which is
as expensive as building a new garage. So again, that project is probably, you know, a $40 to $60 million project if we were to add levels of parking, which was the original goal of that project, to add levels of parking for the Ock Village District and also at that time City Hall. So we still have funding in that to continue to explore that with the state grant money, but my proposal would be to take the $1 million of general fund from 1% from there. Similarly, the Waterfront Museum has funding in it for from passenger fees, but it has $300,000 in general fund from the 1%. This would be this proposal would be to pull the general fund out of that account and reappropriate it. Lemon Creek Multimodal Path has long been a CBJ priority. In fact, you asked the staff to do some feasibility and some community outreach on that project, and we have secured a grant and are working with the communications team to do that. Our strategy with Lemon Creek Multimodal Path, which is an over $10 million project that would divert pedestrian and cycle traffic kind of through the dump and along Egan instead of having to wind through the kind of scary streets of Lemon Creek proper. Our strategy has been to have enough seed money in that account that we can continue to aggressively pursue grants. The current administration is less favorable to these multimodal projects than the previous administration. So, you know, there may be a pause in that, but we feel like with $1 million left in that account, we can still continue that strategy of aggressively looking for funding. There's also a proposal to transfer $175,000 from the River Road Junk Vehicle CIP. This project, which is cleaning up that property on River Road and then putting a lien on that property to pay for what the city and borough has spent in cleaning up that property, has really met with some challenges in the court system and has not been successful. So does leave some funding in that account, $75,000 in that account, should the opportunity arise for us to do some of that proactive work. But we have found that that's very challenging project for a lot of reasons. I won't go into a ton of detail. The other proposal, because I just could not find $6 million in projects that I thought were, weren't coming to fruition in the near future, is $2 million from deferred maintenance. This account has about $5 to $6 million in it. The rationale being this is a city facility, pulling funds from this account to spend on a city facility. Certainly, our deferred maintenance needs are long. We would love to see that funding restored because the Burns Building remodel is such an urgent need if the assembly approves this moving forward with this transfer. Certainly, you could dedicate the sale of the current city hall, any proceeds from that, to replenishing the deferred maintenance fund. And of course, there's always fund balance, and that's an option that I didn't propose because I really wanted to give you something that you could move forward with that protected your fund balance. But of course, that is always an option. So I think I want to close with a little bit of grandstanding. So please excuse my taking the opportunity here. But I know that, I would have preferred, and speaking for me and city employees, a purpose-built facility that really met our needs. And this is not that, but it's a perfectly decent office space that is less than half per square foot and in total of what a purpose-built facility would cost. And I think that's, being responsive to the voters, but also addressing our very real needs for decent office space. And I feel, as the city manager who is really in charge of our city and borough of Juneau employees, I have an obligation to provide them a safe space, a decent space, safe drinking water, a bathroom to go to, and that really is what this project is trying to do. And I would argue that you also have a moral obligation to provide decent office space for city and borough of Juneau employees. And so I would implore you to do that. And thank you for letting me soapbox for a little bit, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Manager Kester? I'll go Mr. Kelly, Steininger, Brooks, Hughes Candies. Oh, and Mayor Weldon. Sorry, Mayor. I heard your first, and because I've not seen you, Mayor Weldon, we're going to give you the floor.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. So on the $2 million in maintenance, you said we could sell City Hall. Have we got a rough estimate of how much City Hall would sell?
Thank you for that question, Mayor Weldon. We don't, I believe we are working on that. That requires an appraisal. And I know that the lands manager Blydorn is working on that. I believe the assessed value is a little over $3 million. However, we don't do much with assessed with, untaxed property. So it's likely not a very accurate estimate. The real value of that parcel that you're all in right now is the land and the location.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I'll start with this question, and you and I did talk a little about this when we talked on Friday. But it's my understanding that this new office building operating it would basically be a reduction of what we're paying now in current operations. However, we have like a significant upfront cost. Would you be able to remind me how long it would take for us to break even and before we would actually start saving money based off of compared to current operations?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the transferring to this building saves us 50% of our operating and maintenance costs, including lease costs. And I believe that's like we spend about 1.2 million, and our condo dues would be 650,000, and that would be our all-in number. And I believe that is a 20-year payback. So that is with the purchase price and the renovation price. That is when we would be kind of, if you scale that out. The challenge with that number of a 20-year payback is that assumes the status quo, and we know the status quo isn't feasible. And if we don't move forward, we would be leasing different space at a higher cost. But of course, making those assumptions isn't really fair. So that's where we ended up with the 20-year payback number.
Mr. Steininger.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Manager Kester. My question might be diving a little bit too far into the weeds, but the $2 million in maintenance CIP that you're proposing to transfer, there's logic because 2.7 million of this purchase price goes into maintenance, so it's kind of a one-to-one. But I assume that $2 million isn't all maintenance for the current City Hall building. Is there needed maintenance that we're going to have to push out further as a result of this transfer? Like, kind of what's the cost there?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the way that we do our deferred maintenance is we have a pretty comprehensive matrix of variables that prioritize different projects. So you're correct. It is not directly tied to a project at City Hall. And that matrix incorporates things like life safety and how emergent the need is. The two projects that would be delayed for this, if we were to transfer these funds, are repairs to the library conference room, and I'm trying to remember if it's the Valley or the downtown. There's a small meeting room in the downtown. Thank you. Might be phoning a friend there who's supposed to be relaxing and not calling in on this, so we can take some turns. But so it would be delaying a leak that is in the downtown library conference room, and then the big project that would be impacted would be HVAC system at the fire hall, and that project we actually wouldn't have enough funding in this year to do the 2026 regardless, but it would get us substantially there. So we would hope if there was some backfilling of deferred maintenance that we would still be able to do that project on schedule, but certainly that would be something that that would be a need to refill those funds.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the moving into the new facility will decrease the operating cost by 50%. Can you give like an idea of how much of that 50% in reduction of cost will be attributed to new paint and carpet and what the cost estimates are for those, please?
Well, it's really not the reduction in operating expenditure doesn't have anything to do with the capital cost of paint and carpet. But the budget for the budget for carpet is $260,000. That includes demoing and installing new carpet tiles. I don't have a cost estimate for paint. We're hoping that, that's a project that we can do as employees. We do have this will be a union project with a project labor agreement. So that's a piece that we would have to care for. So I don't have the painting cost estimate, but really paint and carpet are not the most expensive parts of this. It's reconfiguring the space.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question about the CIP items. My memory is not helping me out here, remembering what number we actually landed on at our retreat when we talked about, do we try to control costs through some reductions, but then we also had a conversation about controlling costs through CIP. And I'm saying controlling costs, but really what I mean is looking for cuts. And I think hearing you go through the list with each project and why they're, good candidates or why they were unlikely to move forward in our current budget situation, wouldn't these be the same CIPs that we would use to reduce budget pressure? I don't know if someone else remembers better, like if we had a number for CIP, but I think you get sort of the bent I'm on, so.
Yeah, I remember because I had to translate your direction into real numbers for staff to build the CIP. So the direction that I gave staff was, because the direction that I heard from you was to reduce the CIP through a mix of reducing projects, so named projects, and also kind of overall CIP line items, but not touch our maintenance line items. And so the direction that we gave to staff to develop the CIP was to not fund the North State Office Building parking garage and the Waterfront Museum, who are two projects that are scheduled for about $3 million total in the next round of 1% funding. And then the other $1 million of that, we are taking in a pro rata reduction in all of the things that we always fund at a certain amount, exclusive of maintenance for schools and maintenance for city facilities. Those line items include area-wide paving, trails and playgrounds. Eagle Crests has a maintenance account that we send funding to, and there may be another, but trying to protect the maintenance accounts. And so that is, you'll have that discussion when you receive the CIP, but that is the direction that I gave staff, identifying these same projects.
Yes.
So as a follow-up, and thank you for translating that direction into actual numbers and actual work. So then in this case, so that $3 million of savings would need to be more how you were just describing with the other items, the normal items that get funded pro rata going through and funding them at lesser amounts, because these would no longer be candidates. So these would no longer be savings, correct? Oh, sorry. Ms. Flick has her hand raised, so maybe she gets where I'm going.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hughes Candies. I think it's important to remember that the items and the projects listed in this memo have already been funded. So they were funded FY26 or before. The items that Manager Kester just outlined would be receiving funding in 27 and beyond. So doing transfers based on what's in this memo doesn't really have an impact on controlling costs or budget reductions for 27 because these have already been funded. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's super helpful. So thank you. I was starting to get my wires crossed a little bit. So, for example, these named projects, these are the amounts. We can sweep these amounts through a transfer, and it could also be true that those named projects are going to not show up in the CIP or
So for example, the North State Office Building,
yeah.
the $1 million in Manager Kester's memo has already been funded. Her request here is to sweep that for the municipal building, but that project was also supposed to get roughly $2.5 million next year.
This year.
And
right.
so for FY27, her direction is don't put that 2.7 or $2.5 million into this project for next year. That would be a budget reduction.
Got it.
For 27.
Super helpful. Thank you, Ms. Flick.
I've got Mr. Kelly, but I'm going to fit in a question first. Also, hearkening back to the retreat, I'm thinking about our fund balance and whether that may be a more appropriate use in some cases here. What this says is, our estimate for the end of this current fiscal year, given the reductions in revenue, would be 15 million. It's okay if you can't remember this, but when we set some goals at the retreat in terms of what size reductions we would make and the revenue we would increase, do we remember what the fund in that scenario where we reach our goals through the budget process, what we would be drawing from from the fund balance in FY27, Ms. Flick?
Yes, it's anywhere from 1.5 to 1.2 million to 4.2 million of fund balance draw for FY27. So if you fully maximize all of the other areas of reductions and our revenue growth, it's only 1.2 million. If we end up on the lower side of some of those ranges, it would be 4.2 million.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Smith because he hasn't asked a question yet, and then back to Mr. Kelly. Oh, I do see Mr. Wheeler. Maybe I'll ask staff if there's something they would like Mr. Wheeler to answer, or maybe that's a mistaken hand. All right, I'm going to keep us rolling. Mr. Smith and Mr. Kelly.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I have a little to add to the deferred maintenance if I could.
Mr. Wheeler, it's a bit out of our protocol to call on you in this scenario, but you're welcome to follow up with us. That's
Yeah,
okay.
no problem. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's about, I guess, like the mechanics of the transfer, timing of the transfer. So my sense is if say we move this as proposed, if the funding all comes as a transfer, that would show up as like a consent item on a future assembly meeting.
Madam Manager, do you want me to answer that one?
The answer is yes. That could be pulled by, that of course could be pulled, but transfers are typically on the consent agenda in one reading. You could do something different, but that is the protocol for transfers.
And just a follow-up or maybe related question. Say we wanted to change any of these amounts to general fund, would that require an appropriating ordinance?
That is correct. So if you wanted to say, don't take $2 million from maintenance, rather we'd like to do an ordinance that would take 2 meetings to approve. You could also say, do the transfer as you have it written on your memo, and then please prepare an ordinance to transfer $2 million from general fund to deferred maintenance. And that would take 2 meetings to accomplish. But that would allow the efficiency of Manager Kester knowing that she's got the funding available to move forward with the renovation, but also then care for replenishing the deferred maintenance, if that's your desire.
Mr. Smith?
And just because Ms. Flick mentioned it, if we were to direct the manager to say move 2 million from general fund to the deferred maintenance CIP in our FY27 budget, we could also, would that be appropriate direction, or does an ordinance make more sense? Looks like Ms. Kester.
Miss
wants to say
Kester, are you okay?
There's a mouse in my hotel room. I'm sorry.
Manager Kester, do you need a minute to call 911?
No, sorry. Just tuck my feet up under me.
Mr. Smith, I think you could direct the manager to include in her proposed budget an additional 2 million to go from the general fund balance to the deferred maintenance CIP in FY27. You could also propose that as an adjustment throughout your budget process. Either way, I think is fine.
Mr. Kelly?
Given that new information, I'm going to hold off on my question.
Mayor Weldon, and I see Mr. Brooks and Ms. Eusebius.
Well, first of all, do I need to come save you, Katie or Ms. Kester? This is a question for Ms. Flick. But we could tonight just say, go ahead, we'll figure out the funding later, correct?
Madam Mayor, by go ahead, do you mean go ahead with this transfer?
Yes, but then I just answer my own question because we have to have where it's coming from. Never mind.
Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is for the manager. The floor plan is another thing that arguably doesn't necessarily directly contribute to a reduced operating cost of a facility. Is there other alternative floor plans that have been exercised and cost estimates that are lower than the 7.5?
So the estimate is 8.5, and again, that is value, that is committing to doing more value engineering and getting that number down through any way possible. So that original cost estimate came in at 13 million, and we're committed to not spending more than 8.5 million. The floor plan includes some new office space, so including some new interior walls for supervisors. And the reason that we did that is because putting supervisors in cubicles means you need to have additional conference rooms so that they can have private conversations, HR issues, etc. And so when you look at the space needs of those private additional conference rooms and keeping supervisors in cubicles, it really didn't make sense to do that. Certainly, the more walls that we build, the more that drives the cost. So that was the trade-off that we struggled with when looking at the floor plan. And the floor plan's, still under design, so it's not, and that will be an area that we use to try to control costs.
I have Ms. Eusebius and Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Manager Kester, we typically don't see these things the budget broken down by cost item, which is, in my mind, 99% a good thing, because you don't want 9 elected officials going through your project. And for instance, the playground comes to mind, and when people got really into the weeds of like, why don't we put the swing set over here? And I think we're all familiar with how well that doesn't work. But I am thinking about the concept of value engineering, knowing that we are already trying to drag it down to that lower number, 13 to 8.5. And I'm wondering, knowing the financial situation we're in, knowing that we are already under, I think, our estimates on sales quarter, or one of the quarters, I think we're under on sales tax, and knowing what kind of budget season we're going to have, what thought has been given to doing this, looking at which pieces can be done kind of staged? So can we do some of this later? For instance, you just mentioned the interior walls, and I recognize there's great reasons why those have to happen at the same time that the move does. But are there things like the assembly chambers expansion in dais, or the front desk, or things like that, the painting, the carpet, that have we tried to add that up and see if we could split that across years?
So the most economical thing to do is to renovate a building when you're not inside it. If you do renovations once you're inside a building, you're paying not only for leased space to move those employees into, but also for the moving costs of moving all of that furniture. Because this, we have to hire movers, we have to pay for all of those costs. You have to pay for the inefficiencies of not being in there. So there are very few things that I would recommend coming back and doing later. Expanding chambers, for example, you guys could squeeze into a smaller chambers that doesn't quite fit your needs. But then the disruption of having to expand chambers means that we're hosting meetings somewhere else. The employees that are also on that floor can't, work on that floor. So it becomes really difficult really quickly. I mean, I think what we are committing to you with saying we will bring this in at $8.5 million instead of $13 million is that we will make every single decision we can to control costs on this, because we've committed that to you. Oh, that mouse is running around. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
So we are committing to you. I mean, there's furniture we cannot buy, right? We can say we're going to incorporate furniture costs and some of these other things into future budgets, operational budgets, instead of those upfront costs. So we've had some of those conversations of like, what could we wait for? But really, I don't see a lot that we can carve out of this cost estimate aside from what we're already committing to you, that frankly, we don't have a plan for. We have all those ideas that you're bringing us of, okay, what if you were economize here or there, that we're going to have to pull on. So there is some faith that that you're putting in us and being able to, bring this actual cost down and still get a basic product that is suitable for city employees. And I can tell you, we're using all of our smarts and all of our, ingenuity and creativity to try to do that. So, asking me are you doing that even more? No, we are committed to doing that 100%.
Thank you, Manager Kessler. And a bit of a follow-up. I have no doubt that you all are using all your tricks, and I also have no doubt that you all have superior skill sets to bring that in under budget, or that you are looking for every cost efficiency. I am sure there are many good quotes, because I've read them and I can't think of any right now, but the basic gist is it's very expensive to be poor. If you can buy a thing and you buy it once, that's a lot cheaper over the long-term cost than renting. And it gives me no pleasure to be sitting here and suggesting, are there worse and inefficient ways we could do things as a city? Could we make things more expensive by getting people in and out, and harder on the employees by moving them back and forth between telework and being in the office? So I imagine you all haven't spent much time with that, because CBJ does, as an organization, in my experience, really work hard to bring in the most efficient and best product it can in all things to the city. So I fully understand that would be more expensive and less efficient. And I am trying to think from the perspective of a city that has recently voted to, you know, if it may be more expensive over time for us because we get a set allowance, you know, every year, and that makes it ties our hands and it makes things more difficult. So that is where that question is coming from, but I appreciate your feedback.
Ms. Hall, then Ms. Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is another one of those in the weeds questions, but do we know the condition of the roof of the Burns building with the snow load?
Yeah, Assemblymember Hall, I do not know an answer to that question specifically. I do know that we've done a thorough condition assessment of the facility. So I'm sure our facility superintendent has that information, but part of our due diligence in purchasing the building was that facilities assessment. And they had a leak, not a roof leak, and they notified me immediately about it because we are in this negotiation to purchase the building. So I would expect that same notification if they had any of those other concerns, because they've been very good about keeping me updated on the state of the building.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kester, maybe a somewhat snarky question, I apologize. We've been talking a lot about the sort of tangible costs of this, looking at the memo you've provided us, but would you say that good working conditions for employees would translate to employee retention and government efficiency, which in itself does save on costs?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mr. Brooks, I'm hoping we are getting close to wrapping up this question and answer session. Thank you. Not to pick on you, just that's for everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate, and I have no doubts either that you guys are doing everything you can to whittle it down to as small as possible. But you're saying like the initial ideas were kind of at 20. Now, you know, refine it to 13 and want to bring it in at 8.9. But if you're initially upwards of 20, we were looking at doing all deferred maintenance and renovating this entire facility for 14 million. We're moving into a building that is substantially in better condition and with better amenities than this facility, but we somehow would need to spend more to make it usable. So just for, you know, maybe people tuning in at home and myself, just kind of walking through how that comes about.
Thank you, Assemblymember Brooks. First, I want to point out that less than half of our downtown employees are actually housed in City Hall. So most of our employees are housed, they used to be housed in the Muni Way building and Marine View. Muni Way employees are scattered across the wind right now. Some of them are in the fish house, some of them are teleworking, some of them have been moved to the central office building. I believe that's what we're calling it now. Former JSD admin building. So certainly just renovating City Hall does not solve our space needs. Second, you know, the $14 million cost estimate was a cost estimate that was done internally, and that was done, you know, years ago when I was engineering and public works director by our then chief architect, who's also wonderful, wonderful person, but also gave us the cost estimates that we were originally working with for renovating the Burns building that were, you know, probably low by about 75%. When we had Northwind Architecture look at actually renovating City Hall, they quoted us upwards of $40 million to renovate City Hall. Now, the reason for that is because the foundation is settling, and so it's kind of breaking in half. Obviously, I would never ask you for $40 million to renovate City Hall. If you were to say, hey, I want to stay in City Hall, I would find the bare minimum things that we would need to extend the lifespan of City Hall, you know, for 10 years. And that $14 million number also didn't extend the lifespan of City Hall for, you know, another 50 years. It extended it for, I can't recall, 10 or 15 years. And it included like the facade and, you know, windows and things like that. But when you start digging into what it really costs to renovate City Hall, it's just really expensive because it's an old building that hasn't been given a lot of attention. So I would caution using that $14 million number as like, gee, everything, we could stay here if we just spent $14 million. If you wanted to stay here, I would would plan on spending money to renovate City Hall. I just can't tell you, it's always a balance. And when you start digging into old buildings, you start finding a lot.
Ms. Candies.
Thanks for your indulgence, Madam Mayor, or Madam Chair. Ms. Flick, I just had one quick one for you. Which was just to clarify my understanding of what you said to Ms. Wall earlier with the 1.2 million on the low range and 4.2 million on the high range. Could you restate what that number is?
Absolutely. Assemblymember Huskandies. At the retreat, we looked at two different options. We looked at two options, but what you ended up giving as direction was the manager was to come up with $3 to $4 million worth of budget assumption cuts. And between the assembly and the manager, roughly $2 million of revenue increase. And the assembly was going to come up with $2 to $4 million of service reductions. And if all of those were done on the high side, that would leave a gap of $1.2 million that we would need to use fund balance to cover the estimated revenue loss. If we came in on the low side of all of those, we would need $4.2 million to cover that estimated revenue loss.
Okay, great. That helps me. So it's to cover the shortfall depending on how well or how poorly we do in our homework that we all have to do.
Absolutely. And also dependent on that $11 million estimate being what comes to fruition.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, are you ready to kick us off with a motion?
I'll give it a shot. I would move that the assembly direct the manager in the FY27 budget to move $2 million from the general fund to the deferred maintenance CIP, and to transfer the funds from the various accounts shown on the bottom of page 33, $2 million from the Capital Civic Center, $2 million from maintenance, $1 million from the North SOB parking lot, 300,000 Waterfront Museum. I probably don't need to read this out. 520, but I'm going, so I'm going to stop, keep going. 525K from Lemon Creek Multimodal Path and 175K from the River Road Junked Vehicle Project. If I may speak to my motion. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate what they are doing to try to make this as cost-effective of a move and renovation as they can. I know they were trying very hard, and I appreciated Manager Kester's efforts to try to make it so, directors and the managers don't have these windows like a la, 1987 or whatever. Obviously, that was too expensive, but I appreciate what they're trying to do there. And the motion, including the transfer from maintenance, is, I said it before, we are tightening the budget with the reduced revenue we expect, but in my value is that we will not put that on the shoulders of future assemblies or by underfunding our infrastructure. So the reason for the motion, I think people probably get, it moves the transfer along, but it also is essentially in 27 in the manager's budget will backfill money from the general fund to deferred maintenance. So that CIP is essentially replenished, because I think I don't want to get in the habit of underfunding that CIP. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Objections? Mr. Steininger?
I'll object for the purpose of an amendment because I agree with 99% of what you put forward, but I would much rather see the backfill of the maintenance happen before the fiscal year 27 budget. I think pushing it into 27, then, it just will compete with all of our other 27 needs. And I don't think that we should slow down either of those projects. And I think inflating our 27 budget by another $2 million for deferred maintenance, it doesn't really kind of do justice to putting the costs in the year where the costs are, supposed to be incurred. So I guess my amendment would be to change it to 26 for the transfer from the general fund into deferred maintenance.
And that would be a direction to create an ordinance. That would be the technical amendment.
Yes,
I
thank
believe
you.
I'm looking.
Thank you for cleaning it
No,
up
no,
for me.
okay, just so we all are on the same page. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We have an amendment. Do we have objections to the amendment? Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely appreciate the intent of the amendment, but I guess my objection is dependent on answer from Ms. Kester. My understanding was having this as a transfer was important for timeline reasons, and that potentially having an ordinance with 2 meetings would slow the project down in a detrimental way. Would it make a big difference to have a chunk of this money take a little longer to come than rather than do the backfill?
Thank you for that question. We don't need these funds in so much of a rush that we need to rush them through in 1 meeting. So 2 meetings would be fine.
In that case, I remove my objection.
Maybe now I'm confused, but maybe Mr. Steiner, you can restate your amendment to.
Yeah, maybe I'll state just what I want the end result to be. Yeah. So the end result would be a transfer as contemplated in the manager's memo that transfers money out of maintenance and out of all the other projects that Deputy Mayor Smith listed. And then that would go forward at the next meeting on the consent agenda. And then separately an ordinance that would transfer $2 million into backfill, which would then take a little bit of time.
Any objections to that amendment? Seeing none, that brings us back to the original motion as amended. Oh, Mayor Weldon, sorry, I didn't see the timing of your hand. Were you objecting to the amendment?
No.
Okay, we're coming back to our original motion as amended. I have Ms. Hughes Candies and Mayor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a real hard time with this one, but I feel better knowing that we're taking the maintenance was a non-starter, so I'm happy that we have cared for that through that amendment. So thank you to both of you. I will say that it's hard to advocate for then taking more out of the general fund, because when I look at this, all I feel is all of the competing things that are going to be coming for the general fund, which I don't want to spend down, and I don't want to be one of those assemblies that leaves it in worse shape, because I am grateful for the ones who came before me. That being said, the other thing on this list besides maintenance, this $525,000 out of the Lemon Creek multimodal path, I understand very well the city manager's thinking and explanation, which is super helpful, and that has been our strategy. And there has been an administration change, so this is not something where there's juicy grants really lying around for. So I understand that strategy of just making sure we have enough funds to aggressively seek grants. For me, however, I don't think that this is a great place like this when I look at this list, when we are looking for places to take money from. One of the reasons that this had been championed by why it had been a priority for assemblies is because Lemon Creek traditionally, we felt like when we did our park survey that there weren't enough parks. There was not historically the same amount of municipal funding. So if it's a place where we turn when we need money, I have a problem with that. So I suppose I would amend to drop I'm trying to think how to do this. I would drop a ordinance to put $525,000 back into the Lemon Creek multimodal path is the only way I can think to do it. So if that seems okay, I think that would be my amendment. And I think you've already heard why.
Any, that makes sense based on our conversation so far. I'm following you. Any objections? Mayor Weldon, are you objecting to the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. would you please speak to your objection?
Certainly, I appreciate where Ms. Hughes-Candies is going with this, but we need to come up with money for this, and I don't think we should take it all out of general fund. So unless she has an idea of where it comes from, then I would object because I don't think it should come from general fund. The staff has a plan on what to do with the Lemon Creek multimodal path, and it's a ways down the road. So I think this is a good idea, so I object.
Mr. Kelly, then Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. I will speak in support of Ms. Hughes-Candy's motion. Included in the memo here is basically that a feasibility and outreach. It sounds to me, and maybe I should confirm this before I object. But it sounds to me that we are going to be doing outreach to the people in Lemon Creek to verify that this is this is a project that they value and want. And I think before defunding it, we should have the results of that outreach. Am I understanding correctly that that we do plan on conducting outreach and hearing back from the residents of Lemon Creek? And I guess if so, when would we expect to receive those results?
So the answer is yes. Part of that that project is to do that feasibility work. I don't have a timeline right now, but it's something we will have our new communications division engage on.
Mr. Steininger.
Thank you. And I guess kind of a follow-on question to Mr. Kelly's question. The $1 million that would remain in the project, is that sufficient to do that communication work and any work that might be anticipated to happen on this project over the next, say, year and a half?
Yes, we are leveraging grant funding to do the outreach with match. So yes, I believe that leaves sufficient funding to do that type of feasibility work.
Mr. Steininger, are you maintaining your objection?
Trying to decide if I'm objecting or not.
You can, so yeah, either way, it's fine, I guess. That's helpful. Mr. Smith, then Ms. Hall.
Manager Kester, I have to admit, I don't know where the Lemon Creek multimodal path ended up on our legislative priority list. I guess, do you, from this assembly, do you still feel like that is a priority of this assembly, that project? Or how much, or anyway, like, I guess I get, just to preface my question, I understand Ms. Hughes-Candy's concern about, taking from that CIP, and I understand it. I just want to get a sense from you as the manager, like, are you planning on going back to take more, or or are you like, no, this assembly values this project and therefore, I would leave, sufficient funds in there. Anyway, sorry, that might be a tricky question, but.
It is a little tricky. I will say the project has fallen from, I can't recall exactly where it is in legislative priority list, but it has fallen. I would say some of its champions are no longer on the assembly. One of the challenges of the project is it's very expensive. So it's not the type of project we feel like we would be able to do without grant funding. And so that is a limiting factor. And I do spend a tremendous amount of time trying to guess all of your proclivities for projects. And I guess as evidenced by my including it on this list, it feels like there are just so many other, I mean, we have fires right now, right? We just have so many other priorities that we haven't been able to dedicate the time to advance that project. And again, the grant situation has changed. So probably it's a very long-winded answer, and I'm not going to tell you if it's a yes or a no.
That's
Mr. Smith, are you maintaining your objection?
I am going to maintain it, completely understand and am compassionate towards Ms. Hughes-Candy's motion. We know that area of town needs and deserves additional funding. I don't know that the $500 for this project is like making or breaking that, or should be seen as a sign that we're not, wanting to make additional, recreation and other investments in that area. So I guess I'm balancing that with the strain on the general fund, and that there's still $1 million in there. And anyway, any other withdrawals or transfers, would have to come before the assembly. So I will maintain my objection to the amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Hall.
Yeah, and I also will object. I do so appreciate Ms. Hughes Candy's championing of this, and as I greatly value physical activity and making sure we have equal access around town. But given that the project, the 1 million remaining, will still be able to pursue grant opportunities, but also recognizing the very real climate that we're in right now federally, and the opportunity for such a project going forward is pretty non-existent in the next few years. So I think we do have so many fires to put out, and I think we need to focus on the real needs of our community. And so I will object as well.
I'm going to, thank you, Ms. Hall. I'm going to speak in favor of this amendment for two reasons. I think, this is one of the reasons I wish we had a fund balance policy, so we all kind of knew what we wanted, the reason for our fund balance was. Because when I look at the number 15 million, yes, that's a lot of money, but that's not operating money. That's money that we have there because our investments did well. We have been lucky to have fund balance the last few years, and we have gotten the chance to use it on opportunities and priorities to move them forward. I'm glad we are using some of it to make sure we're careful and deliberate about our budget process, but we don't need 15 million to do that. And so I would like to keep what I consider high priority items funded, because I've in my time here, I've seen some projects that were expensive but were priorities slowly get chipped away at, because we were able to find some funding here and there until we were eventually able to fund them. The fire and police communications tower comes to mind as one of those projects. So this has been a priority for a long time. There's really good reasons for it. There was a lot of public outreach in Lemon Creek to do a plan a long time ago. This was one of those projects that was prioritized. And so I hear you all who are objecting, but that's my pitch. I see Ms. Hughes Candy's.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just will respond briefly. I think, if we want to rethink our approach to things, that's okay. And I understand from Manager Custer's position, when things like federal priorities change, then this seems like as long as we have a little bit in there to keep that alive, then we haven't kicked this off the list entirely. But I think, just to echo what Ms. Wall just said about chipping away at things, if it is no longer a federal priority, or there are not grants all around for that, that does not mean that this is not something that the community still wants and still needs, and that we will just have to figure out how to fund ourselves, and it may take time. But I think you do not then target a specific part of town and say, oh, no grants available, so I guess we're not. It's a priority when there's free money for it, but it's not a priority when there's not. I'm thinking about, in my time here, there was an amendment to a CIP to get lighting for a park in Lemon Creek, Saguyuyi. And I think I checked fairly recently if that had been completed, and somehow it gets bumped down the list. And it took an amendment. It was something I talked about with staff, and the CIP has a lot of things on it. And it's important that we are being equitable in where we are putting our funds. So I understand why this was on the list, because it seems like there's money in it, you can remove money from it, and there's still enough money to keep the project alive. But that does not feel fair to me when there are other park CIPs that we could have attacked. There are a lot of places that have money. When I compare this, which is so specific and has been a priority by previous assemblies and is somewhere on our legislative priorities list, I know it fell, I don't know where it ended up. But this is so specific compared to something like maintenance. And so for me, it does not feel equitable and it does not feel fair. So thanks for your indulgence.
All right, we have a motion and we have an amendment. Ms. Wendell, maybe you can remind us what we're voting on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Well, I will repeat the original motion as amended, and then I will state the amendment currently under consideration. The original motion as amended was to move to direct the manager in the FY26 budget to appropriate $2 million from general funds to the deferred maintenance CIP, and to move forward with transferring the funds from the various accounts listed on the bottom of page 33 to the municipal building CIP. That was the original motion as amended. The amendment currently under consideration is to appropriate $525,000 in addition to the $2 million of general funds, but the $525,000 would be appropriated to the Lemon Creek Multimodal Pass CIP while also moving forward with the proposed transfer. Assemblymember Hughes Scandies.
Yes.
Mayor Weldon.
No.
Assemblymember Smith.
No.
Assemblymember Steininger.
Yes.
Assemblymember Hall.
No.
Assemblymember Atkinson.
No.
Assemblymember Brooks.
No.
Assemblymember Kelly.
Yes.
Chair Wall.
Yes.
The amendment fails, 4 ayes, 5 nays.
All right, that brings us back to the original motion as amended. I'm guessing we're all clear on what that is. Are there objections to our motion on the floor? Seeing none, that is so moved. All right, we have one more item. Are people okay going ahead? I see head nods. Okay, brings us to sales tax exemption, composting. This is from Mr. Kelly. So maybe, well, I asked him to bring it forward. So maybe if you would like to speak to this, and we can see if folks have questions for staff.
Sounds good. I'll try to be brief, maybe save more time if people have specific questions. But this was something that I brought forward when we were considering Proposition 3. It was my priority at that time, and it remains my priority to try and deflect some of the impact on the waste stream. Or away from the dump and more into something that's more efficient. I don't think I need to quite go into the history of this, but I feel that this ordinance would help us to encourage a good behavior. I was hesitant to bring it up earlier because we are not, we don't have the benefit of the seasonal sales tax to help pay for things. But it's my understanding after talking with Director Flick that the impact on our budget to this would be negligible. And we're also encouraging what I feel would be a positive behavior. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Questions for staff or for Member Kelly? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, do we have any idea on what the reduction in revenue would be should this ordinance take effect?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Smith. That is a little bit of a tricky question to answer because this exemption is written for residential only composting. And so much like all of the other sales tax exemptions around utilities, the exempting for residential only becomes a little tricky to estimate. There is only one vendor in town, so for confidentiality reasons, I can't share with you all of the information about that vendor's tax returns. However, I can tell you that I don't think you will need to adjust your plan moving forward for reductions because of the inclusion of this exemption. It will be a revenue reduction, but I don't believe it will be sufficient to move the needle. So you need to figure out another swath of services to reduce or anything of that nature.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
Ready for a motion?
Maybe I'll let Mr. Kelly do it since it's his, go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I move that the Finance Committee forward to the full assembly for introduction at the next assembly meeting an ordinance amending the uniform sales tax of the city and borough of Juneau to, I guess, ordinance currently with the serial number of 2026-XX on page 34 of our packet, and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections?
Ms. Wall, may I provide a clarification?
Yes.
Your next assembly meeting is on Monday. This would actually come forward to you in February, so it has proper time to be publicized and noticed for introduction.
Thanks for that clarification. Any objections? Seeing none, that is so moved. We have information only sales tax delinquency publication. Any questions on that? Brings us to next meeting date, February 4th, 2026, though I believe we may be scheduling, according to our new budget calendar, a joint meeting that will be maybe it's probably not a finance committee meeting, it's whatever, special meeting or something, but part of the budget process. Okay, that brings us to executive session. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to adjourn into executive session to address litigation, mediation, and legal strategy related to marine passenger fees and dock fees, and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections from the body? Any objections from the public? Seeing none, we're in executive session, or we will be when folks exit the room. We're going to stay here, I believe.
Yes, Chair Wall, for logistics purposes, we are going to stay in this room. I will set up a Zoom so the mayor and the manager can participate. We'll get them online.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we take a break?
Yes.
Okay, at least 10 minutes so I could run downstairs and save Katie.
I can do it if we're taking a break. Thank you, Mayor.
I can though. For the record, I'll announce that we won't be returning to public session after the executive session.